The year was 2347, and humanity had grown beyond their small blue planet. They had built colonies on 17 different worlds across 4 star systems. They had learned to travel faster than light. They had cured diseases that once killed millions. They had become a spacefaring civilization. But to the older species of the galaxy, humans were still nothing more than children taking their first steps into a very dangerous universe. Admiral Daniel Brooks stood alone on the observation deck of the USS Sentinel, Earth's most powerful warship. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much death. Through the massive window before him, he could see the endless darkness of space, dotted with distant stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the boundary that humans called the threshold, lay the territory of the Velthari Dominion. The Velthari were an ancient race of reptilian warriors who had conquered over 2,000 worlds. They viewed other species the way humans once viewed insects. Something to be crushed or ignored. For the past 3 years, they had been raiding human colony ships. They took civilians and transported them to mining worlds where they worked until they died. The Velthari did not see this as wrong. To them, humans were simply resources to be used. The door behind Daniel opened and Lieutenant Maria Santos stepped onto the observation deck. She was young with dark hair and sharp eyes. She carried a tablet in her hands, and her face showed the weight of bad news. "Admiral," she said quietly, "we have confirmed reports about the transport vessel Horizon." Daniel did not turn around. He already knew what she was going to say. "How many?" 312 civilians, sir. Families mostly. They were traveling to the New Berlin colony when a Velthari raiding party intercepted them near the threshold. The ship was disabled and boarded. Everyone on board was taken. Daniel closed his eyes. 312 people. Mothers and fathers. Sons and daughters. All of them. Now prisoners of an empire that would work them to death in the dark tunnels of alien mining worlds. This was the 17th raid in the past 6 months alone. "And our diplomatic response?" he asked. Maria hesitated before answering. "Ambassador Patterson was returned to us this morning, sir." "Returned?" "In pieces. The Velthari sent him back in 17 separate containers. One for each of our previous diplomatic missions." Daniel finally turned to face her. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with something cold and dangerous. He had spent his entire career believing that peace was always possible, that reasonable beings could always find common ground. The Velthari had taught him otherwise. "Inform Earth Command that I am returning immediately," he said. "The Council needs to hear my recommendation in person." 2 days later, Daniel stood before the United Earth Council in the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva. The room was filled with representatives from every nation and colony in human space. At the center of the raised platform sat Secretary General Lisa Morgan, a woman of 60 years with silver hair and steel in her voice. She had led humanity through 3 crises already. This would be her 4th. "Admiral Brooks," she said, "you requested to address this council regarding the Velthari situation. You have the floor." "See." Daniel stepped forward. Every eye in the room was fixed on him. "For 3 years, we have tried peace," he began. "We have sent diplomats. We have offered trade agreements. We have proposed cultural exchanges. We have done everything in our power to show the Velthari that we mean them no harm and desire only peaceful coexistence." He paused and looked around the room. "They have responded by raiding our ships, by kidnapping our people, by murdering our ambassadors. They do not want peace. They see our attempts at diplomacy as weakness. Every time we extend our hand in friendship, they see it as proof that we are too afraid to fight back." Secretary General Morgan leaned forward. "What are you proposing, Admiral?" "I am proposing that we stop asking for peace and start demanding it. The Velthari understand only one language: power. It is time we spoke to them in terms they can comprehend." The council chamber erupted in murmurs. Some representatives looked shocked. Others nodded in grim agreement. Lisa Morgan raised her hand, and silence fell. "You are suggesting we threaten war with the largest military power in the known galaxy," she said. "The Velthari have 10,000 warships, We have perhaps 500. How do you propose we back up such a threat? Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Madam Secretary, humanity has spent the last 50 years preparing for exactly this moment. While we offered olive branches with one hand, we built weapons with the other. The Velthari think they know our military capabilities. They are wrong. They have seen only what we wanted them to see. He activated a holographic display showing the border between human and Velthari space. I propose we draw a line here, at the threshold. We broadcast a message to every Velthari vessel, every outpost, every world in their empire. We tell them that this boundary is now closed. Any ship that crosses it will be destroyed. No warnings, no negotiations, no exceptions. And if they cross anyway? Asked a representative from the Mars colonies. Then we show them what humanity is truly capable of when we stop being polite. The council debated for 6 hours. Some argued that such a message would provoke the very war they were trying to avoid. Others insisted that continued diplomacy was the only moral path. But in the end, the vote was taken. The motion passed by a margin of 3-1. That night, a message was broadcast across every communication frequency in the galaxy. It reached Velthari warships and mining colonies. It reached the homeworld of the Dominion itself. It was heard by hundreds of other species who had long lived in fear of Velthari expansion. The message was simple and direct. This is the United Earth Council speaking to the Dominion of Velthar. We have sought peace. You have answered with violence. We have sent ambassadors. You have returned them in pieces. We have shown patience. You have mistaken it for weakness. No more. The threshold is now closed. Any Velthari vessel that enters human space will be destroyed. Without warning. Without negotiation. Without mercy. This is Earth's final warning. Dare to cross and endure the consequence. On the Velthari homeworld, High Counselor Verath listened to the message with his advisors gathered around him. When it finished, he began to laugh. His advisors joined him. The sound of their amusement echoed through the ancient halls of the Dominion Palace. The humans threaten us, Verath said, his reptilian eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. These primitive creatures who have existed for barely a heartbeat dare to draw lines before the Dominion. Prepare the Third Fleet. It is time to remind the galaxy what happens to species that forget their place. Across the void of space, Admiral Daniel Brooks received reports of Velthari fleet movements. He stood once more on the observation deck of the Sentinel, watching the stars. They are coming, Maria Santos said quietly. Daniel nodded. Yes, they are. Are we ready? The Admiral turned to face her. For the first time in months, there was something like hope in his eyes. Hope mixed with grim determination. We have been ready for 50 years, Lieutenant. The Velthari just never knew it. They wanted a war. Now, they are going to get one. He looked back at the stars, toward the threshold where humanity had drawn its line. God help them. Supreme Commander Zorath had spent his entire life conquering worlds. He had led the Velthari Third Fleet to victory against 47 different species. Some had surrendered without a fight. Others had resisted and been crushed beneath the overwhelming firepower of Velthari warships. Zorath had never lost a battle. He did not intend to start now. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Fury of Dominion, watching his crew prepare for what he believed would be an easy mission. 50 warships followed behind him, in perfect formation. Destroyers and cruisers and battleships armed with weapons that could reduce cities to ash in seconds. Against such a force, the humans had perhaps 30 ships in the entire region. Set course for the human colony designated New Geneva, Zorath commanded. We will burn it to the ground and take any survivors as slaves. Let this be a lesson to all who would dare threaten the Dominion. His navigation officer looked up with a hint of concern. Supreme Commander, our intelligence suggests the humans have deployed some form of defense network near the threshold. Should we not investigate before committing the full fleet? Zorath made a sound of disgust. Defense network? The humans have nothing that can threaten us. Their technology is primitive. Their military is small. They issued their warning because words are all they have. We will cross their precious threshold and show them the price of arrogance. The fleet moved forward, engines burning bright against the darkness of space. As they approached the invisible boundary that humans called the threshold, Zorath felt a thrill of anticipation. He imagined the terror on human faces when they saw his armada approaching their helpless colony. He imagined the fires that would consume their cities. He imagined the reports he would send back to High Counselor Verath, describing his total victory. He never got the chance to imagine anything else. The moment the first Velthari ships crossed the threshold, space itself seemed to explode. Hidden among asteroids and debris fields, thousands of quantum detonation mines activated simultaneously. These were not the primitive explosive devices that the Velthari had encountered before. These were weapons that tore apart the very fabric of space-time around their targets. 12 Velthari warships vanished in the first 3 seconds. Not destroyed, vanished. Erased from existence as if they had never been. Zorath gripped his command chair as his ship shook from the shock waves. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge. Officers shouted damage reports and casualty numbers. On the tactical display, 12 points of light that had represented mighty warships were simply gone. What happened? Zorath roared. What did they hit us with? Unknown weapon signatures, Supreme Commander. We have never encountered anything like this. The affected vessels did not explode. They were simply removed from existence. Zorath stared at the display in disbelief. 12 ships. Gone in seconds. It was impossible. The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be inferior. How could they possess weapons that the Dominion had never seen? Continue forward, he ordered, forcing confidence into his voice. They cannot have enough of those weapons to stop us all. Increase speed. We will push through their minefield by sheer numbers. The fleet pressed on, and the mines continued to take their toll. Every few seconds, another ship disappeared. Zorath watched his force shrink from 50 vessels to 40, then 30, but still he pushed forward. He had committed to this attack. To retreat now would mean disgrace. Death was preferable to the shame of fleeing from humans. Then the USS Sentinel arrived. It emerged from faster-than-light travel directly in the path of the Velthari fleet, accompanied by 30 human destroyers. Zorath studied the enemy ships on his display and frowned. They did not look like the human vessels his intelligence had described. These ships were larger. Their hulls were covered in weapon ports he did not recognize. Energy readings suggested power sources far beyond what humans should possess. Admiral Daniel Brooks appeared on the communication screen. His face was calm. His eyes were cold. You were warned, he said simply. Zorath straightened in his chair. Human, you are outnumbered. You have delayed us with your tricks, but you cannot stop us. Surrender now, and I may allow some of your people to live as servants of the Dominion. Daniel did not respond. He simply nodded to someone off-screen. The Sentinel opened fire. The weapon that struck the fury of Dominion was not a laser or a missile or anything else, Zorath recognized. It was a beam of pure white light that seemed to pass through his ship's shields as if they did not exist. The impact tore through 3 decks and killed 70 crew members instantly. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as systems overloaded and power conduits ruptured. All around Zorath's crippled flagship, similar scenes played out across the Velthari fleet. Human destroyers moved with impossible speed, weaving between larger ships and striking at vulnerable points. Their weapons bypassed Velthari shields. Their maneuvers defied the tactical predictions of Velthari computers. Everything the Dominion knew about human military capability was wrong. Commander Kevin Palmer sat in the Tactical Command Center of Outpost 7, watching the battle unfold on his screens. He was a young officer, only 32 years old, but he had trained for this moment his entire career. Admiral Brooks is engaging the main fleet, reported his sensor operator. Velthari losses are at 60% and climbing. Kevin nodded. What about their escape vectors? Are any ships trying to retreat? 7 vessels are breaking formation and heading back toward Velthari space. Let them go. We want survivors. We want them to report back to their masters Exactly what happened here today. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, 43 Velthari warships had been destroyed. 7 had escaped, badly damaged and fleeing at maximum speed. The third fleet, which had conquered 47 species, had been annihilated by a force less than half its size. Supreme Commander Zorath died on the bridge of the Fury of Dominion when the ship's reactor finally overloaded. His last thoughts were of confusion and denial. This was not supposed to happen. Humans were weak. Humans were primitive. Humans were nothing. He was wrong about all of it. On the bridge of the Sentinel, Admiral Daniel Brooks watched the debris of the Velthari fleet drift through space. There was no celebration among his crew. No cheering or congratulations. They had won, but they all knew this was only the beginning. Casualties? Daniel asked quietly. 2 destroyers lost, Maria Santos reported. The Vigilant and the Steadfast. Combined crew of 412. No survivors. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. 412 men and women who would never go home. The cost of drawing a line and defending it. Send a message to Earth Command, he said finally. Inform them that the threshold has been tested. The test was passed. But tell them to prepare for what comes next. The Velthari will not let this defeat go unanswered. They will come back with everything they have. Maria nodded. Sir. The 7 ships that escaped. They will reach Velthari space in approximately 40 hours. Once they report what happened here, the entire Dominion will know. That is exactly what I am counting on, Daniel replied. I want them to know. I want every Velthari commander and politician to understand what happened today. We gave them a warning. They ignored it. Now, they have learned the consequence. He turned to face his crew. But this war is not over. It has only begun. The Velthari have thousands more ships. They will send them all if they have to. Our job is to make sure that when they do, we are ready. Across the galaxy, the 7 surviving Velthari ships limped toward home, carrying with them tales of impossible weapons and unstoppable human warriors. The news would spread, the Dominion would respond, and humanity would face the greatest test in its history. But for now, in this moment, the line held. The humans had spoken in the only language the Velthari understood, and the Velthari had finally listened. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, every spacefaring species from the core worlds to the outer rim had heard what happened at the threshold. The mighty Velthari Third Fleet, conqueror of 47 civilizations, had been destroyed by a species most had dismissed as insignificant primitives. 50 warships reduced to floating debris by a force half their size. It seemed impossible. And yet the 7 survivors who limped back to Velthari space confirmed every detail. Ambassador Chris Davis stood in his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Endeavour, preparing for what he knew would be the most important speech of his life. He was a man of 50 years with a calm demeanor that had served him well in decades of interstellar negotiations. But today, he would not be negotiating. Today he would be explaining to the entire galaxy why humanity had just killed thousands of Velthari soldiers. The Galactic Assembly was held on a massive space station at the center of known space. Representatives from over 300 species gathered there to discuss matters of galactic importance. For centuries, it had been dominated by the larger powers, with smaller species having little voice in its proceedings. The Velthari had always been among the loudest voices, using their military strength to intimidate others into compliance. Chris walked into the vast assembly chamber and felt hundreds of alien eyes turn to study him. Some looked at him with curiosity. Others, with fear. A few, particularly those from species that had suffered under Velthari expansion, looked at him with something that might have been hope. He took his place at the speaker's podium and waited for silence. Distinguished representatives, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. I come before you today, not to apologize for what humanity has done, but to explain why we did it. A murmur passed through the assembly. The Krathani delegate, a towering insectoid being with compound eyes that reflected the chamber lights, raised one of his forearms. Ambassador Davis. Your species has destroyed an entire Velthari fleet. 50 vessels. Thousands of lives ended in minutes. Many here would call this an act of unprecedented aggression. Chris nodded slowly. And what would you call the kidnapping of our civilians? What would you call the murder of our diplomats? What would you call the raids on our ships that have continued for 3 years despite our repeated attempts at peaceful resolution? The Krathani fell silent. His species had faced similar treatment from the Velthari centuries ago, before they learned to stay quiet and avoid attracting attention. We did not seek this conflict, Chris continued. We sent 17 diplomatic missions to the Velthari homeworld. 17 times we asked for nothing more than peaceful coexistence. 17 times our ambassadors were executed and their bodies returned to us as warnings. We drew a line. We made our position clear. The Velthari chose to cross that line. They faced the consequence of that choice. The Selenari representative spoke next. Her species was known for their wisdom and their glowing eyes that could see emotions as clearly as physical forms. And now, Ambassador? Will humanity wage war across the galaxy? Will you become the new Velthari, using your hidden weapons to dominate others? Chris looked directly at her. No. We have no interest in conquest. We have no desire to rule over other species. All we have ever wanted is to live in peace and explore the stars alongside our neighbors. But we will not be victims. We will not allow our people to be taken as slaves. We will not sacrifice our citizens on the altar of false diplomacy. If others leave us in peace, we will gladly extend the hand of friendship. If others choose violence, they will face the full weight of our response. High Counselor Verath of the Velthari Dominion rose from his seat. His scales were dark green, and his eyes burned with barely contained fury. He was old for his species, nearly 300 years, and he had led the Dominion through its greatest period of expansion. The destruction of the Third Fleet was the first true defeat he had ever experienced. You speak of peace, Verath hissed, while the wreckage of our ship still drifts through space. You speak of defense while you clearly possess weapons designed for offense. The Dominion sees through your lies. Human, you have been planning this attack for decades. You pretended to be weak while you built your secret armada. You are not defenders. You are deceivers. Chris remained calm. We built our weapons because species like yours gave us no choice. For 50 years we watched the Velthari conquer and enslave. We hoped we would never need to use what we created. Your raids on our ships and murders of our diplomats proved that hope was naive. Verath slammed his fist on his podium. You have made an enemy of the greatest power in the galaxy. The Dominion will mobilize every ship, every soldier, every weapon we possess. Your worlds will burn. Your people will be exterminated. Your very species will be erased from the memory of the stars. You are welcome to try, Chris replied simply. The assembly erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted at each other. Some species began preparing to leave, afraid of being caught in the coming conflict. Others gathered in small groups, whispering about what this might mean for the balance of galactic power. On Earth, Secretary General Lisa Morgan watched the assembly proceedings from her office. When Verath made his threat, she simply nodded to her aide. Begin full mobilization. Activate all reserve fleets, and initiate the final phase of Project Prometheus. Lieutenant Commander Amy Turner received her orders while stationed at a research facility on Mars. She was a brilliant engineer who had spent her career developing weapons she hoped would never be used. Now she was being summoned to a classified facility she had only heard rumors about. The transport took her beneath the Martian surface, through layers of security that required genetic verification, retinal scans, and codes that changed every hour. Finally, she emerged into a vast underground chamber that made her stop and stare in disbelief. Dr. Samuel Grant was waiting for her. He was an older man with white hair and the tired eyes of someone who had carried a heavy burden for too long. Welcome to Prometheus, Commander Turner. This is where we keep the weapons we built for the end of the world. Amy walked slowly through the facility, her eyes wide as she took in what surrounded her. Rows upon rows of warheads, each one capable of destroying a planet. Prototype ships with engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of weeks. Energy weapons that made the ones used at the threshold look like toys. "We have been preparing for this moment since first contact," Samuel explained. "We knew that eventually we would encounter a species that would not accept our existence. The Velthari are not the first aggressive species in the galaxy. They will not be the last. We built Prometheus to ensure that humanity survives no matter what we face." Amy stopped in front of one particularly massive device. It was spherical, nearly 100 meters in diameter, and it pulsed with an energy she could feel even through the containment fields. "What is this?" Samuel was quiet for a moment. "We call it the Consequence. It is a quantum destabilization bomb, capable of unmaking an entire planet. We have built 12 of them. They are the last resort, the weapon we use when all other options have failed." Amy felt cold despite the warmth of the facility. "Have we really built weapons to destroy worlds?" "We built weapons to protect our world," Samuel replied. "The Velthari have threatened to exterminate us. They have the ships and the soldiers to try. These weapons ensure that if they push us far enough, if they truly threaten the survival of our species, we can push back in ways they cannot imagine." He looked at her with something like sorrow in his eyes. "I hope we never have to use them. But hope is not a strategy. The Velthari are coming with everything they have. Our job is to make sure that when they arrive, they understand exactly what they are risking." Amy nodded slowly. She had joined the military to protect people. She had never imagined that protection would require weapons capable of ending worlds. But the Velthari had made their choice. Now humanity would show them what that choice had cost. The Velthari Dominion had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. In all that time, no species had ever truly challenged their supremacy. They had conquered worlds without number. They had crushed rebellions before they could begin. They had built an empire on the simple principle that might made right, and they had the most might of all. The destruction of the Third Fleet was not just a military defeat, it was an insult to everything the Dominion believed about itself. High Counselor Verath stood before the gathered admirals and generals of the Velthari military. Behind him, holographic displays showed the full might of the Dominion war machine. 10,000 warships, 200 million soldiers, weapons that had burned civilizations to ash. "The humans believe they have won a victory," Verath said, his voice cold with fury. "They believe that destroying 50 ships has somehow made them our equals. They are wrong. The Third Fleet was merely a scouting force. What we send next will be an extinction event." Admiral Korath, the oldest and most respected military commander in the Dominion, stepped forward. "High Counselor, our intelligence suggests the humans possess weapons we have never encountered. Perhaps we should consider a more cautious approach. Learn more about their capabilities before committing our full strength." Verath turned to face him with contempt in his eyes. "Caution? You suggest caution against a species that has existed for barely a heartbeat? The humans caught us off guard with their hidden weapons. It will not happen again. We will overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Let them destroy 100 ships, 1,000. We have 10,000 more. They cannot stop them all." The invasion fleet assembled over the following weeks. Ships from every corner of the Dominion gathered at staging areas near the threshold. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Verath himself would command from his flagship, the Eternal Vengeance, a vessel so massive it could be seen from orbit with the naked eye. The target was humanity's oldest and most beloved colony world, New Hope. 4 million people lived there, farmers and teachers and children who had never known war. Verath intended to burn it all and broadcast the destruction across the galaxy as a warning to any who might consider following humanity's example. Captain Derek Hunt was assigned to defend New Hope with a fleet of 200 ships. He was young for such a command, only 38 years old. But he had proven himself in simulations and smaller engagements. Now he faced the greatest test any human commander had ever encountered. He studied the sensor data showing the approaching Velthari armada and felt the weight of 4 million lives pressing down on him. "They outnumber us 50 to 1, his executive officer said quietly. "Our weapons are better, but those numbers are overwhelming. Derek nodded. Then we make every shot count. We do not need to destroy their entire fleet. We need to buy time for the civilian evacuation and make the cost of this attack so high that they think twice about the next one. The battle began at dawn, New Hope time. The Velthari fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, spreading across space like a dark tide. Verath watched from his command throne and smiled. The human defenders looked pathetic against such overwhelming force. All ships, Verath commanded, begin the attack. Leave nothing alive. Derek responded by ordering his fleet into an unexpected formation. Instead of spreading out to meet the enemy, his ships clustered together in tight groups. The Velthari interpreted this as fear. They were wrong. The human ships had been equipped with a new weapon system called networked targeting. When grouped together, they could combine their fire into concentrated beams of devastating power. The first volley from Derek's fleet tore through a Velthari battleship like paper. The second destroyed 3 more. The third caught a carrier as it was launching fighters, turning it into an expanding cloud of debris, but the numbers were still overwhelming. For every Velthari ship that fell, 2 more took its place. Human vessels began to die. The destroyer Courage was the first to go, overwhelmed by enemy fire. Then the cruiser, Defiance. Then the battleship, Unbroken. Derek watched his fleet shrink and made a decision that would be remembered for centuries. All ships, he broadcast. When your weapons fail, use your engines. When your shields fall, keep firing. We hold this line. Not one enemy vessel reaches New Hope. Not one. On the surface of New Hope, Samantha Cole was trying to organize the evacuation of her school. She was a teacher, 42 years old. With no military training and no combat experience, she had spent her life helping children learn mathematics and history. Now she was herding them toward emergency shelters while the sky burned overhead. The evacuation was not going fast enough. Millions of people were trying to reach the transport ships, but there were not enough vessels to carry them all. Priority was being given to children and essential personnel. Everyone else would have to wait and hope the fleet above could hold. Then the Velthari drop pods began falling. They came down like metal rain, crashing into the outskirts of the city. Armored shock troops emerged and began advancing toward the civilian population. Their orders were clear. Take prisoners for the slave markets. Kill anyone who resisted. Samantha saw a Velthari soldier shoot a fleeing woman in the back. Something inside her changed. Fear was replaced by cold fury. She spotted a fallen Marine nearby, his rifle still clutched in his dead hands. She had never fired a weapon before. She did not hesitate. The first Velthari she killed was a surprise to both of them. The soldier had not expected resistance from a civilian. By the time he realized his mistake, 3 rounds from the Marine's rifle had punched through his chest armor. Samantha took up position in a corridor leading to the main evacuation shelter. Hundreds of children huddled behind her, waiting for transport that was still 20 minutes away. Nobody gets through, she told herself. Nobody. The Velthari came in waves. Professional soldiers with decades of combat experience against a school teacher with a borrowed rifle. It should have been over in seconds. Samantha held them for 47 minutes. She used the corridor's narrow confines to negate their numbers. She aimed for weak points in their armor that she somehow noticed, despite never having seen Velthari soldiers before. When her rifle ran out of ammunition, she picked up weapons from the fallen and kept firing. By the time Marine reinforcements arrived, 18 Velthari soldiers lay dead at her feet. Samantha was wounded in 3 places but still standing, still protecting her students. Above New Hope, Captain Derek Hunt made his final decision. His flagship, the Resolute, was badly damaged. Half his crew was dead. But a Velthari carrier was approaching the main evacuation corridor, and if it reached firing position, thousands of civilians would die. Set collision course, he ordered quietly. All hands, abandon ship. I will guide her in manually, his crew protested. He overruled them. The Resolute struck the Velthari carrier at maximum speed. Both ships vanished in a bloom of light, visible from the planet's surface. The battle for New Hope ended 3 hours later. The Velthari eventually took the planet. But the cost was staggering. 3,000 warships destroyed. 200,000 soldiers dead. The evacuation transports escaped with over 2 million civilians, including every child from Samantha Cole's school. High Counselor Verath looked at the casualty reports and felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. 3,000 ships, he whispered. For one world. At this rate, conquering Earth itself will cost us our entire fleet. But retreat was unthinkable. The Dominion had committed. The Dominion would not back down. Verath gathered his remaining 6,000 ships and gave the order to advance. The next target was Earth itself. The final battle was coming. Earth hung in the void like a blue jewel, beautiful and fragile and precious beyond measure. It was the cradle of humanity, the world where their species had taken its first steps, dreamed its first dreams, and looked up at the stars with wonder in their eyes. 8 billion people called it home. 8 billion souls who had never known war on their own soil. Now war was coming to them. Admiral Daniel Brooks stood on the bridge of the USS Sentinel, watching his tactical display with calm acceptance. 400 human ships were arranged in defensive formation around Earth. Behind them, the orbital defense platforms hummed with deadly energy. Below them, billions of people waited and hoped and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. Against them came 6,000 Velthari warships, the largest invasion fleet ever assembled. High Counselor Verath himself commanded from the Eternal Vengeance. Determined to witness the extinction of the species that had dared to defy him, Daniel opened a channel to his fleet. "This is Admiral Brooks. The enemy will arrive in 30 minutes. I will not lie to you about our chances. The odds are not in our favor. Many of us will not survive this day. But I want you to remember something." He paused and looked around his bridge at the men and women who had served with him through everything. "Behind us is Earth. Our families. Our children. Our entire species. We are the last line. If we fall, everything we love falls with us. So we will not fall. We will fight with everything we have. We will make them pay for every inch of space they take. And if this is our end, then by God, we will make it an end they never forget." The Velthari fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel and filled the sky with ships. Verath looked at the pitiful human defense force and laughed. "This is what they send against me? 400 ships? I have crushed species with larger militaries. Open a channel, let the humans hear their doom." His image appeared on every screen in the human fleet. "Admiral Brooks, your resistance ends today. You fought well at the threshold and at New Hope. I will grant you that much. But you must know, this battle is already lost. Surrender now, and I will allow a small number of your kind to survive as servants of the Dominion. Continue to resist, and I will burn your homeworld to ash and scatter the atoms of your species across the void." Daniel studied the Velthari leader with no fear in his eyes. "High Counselor, you have come a long way to die," Verath hissed with anger. "You dare threaten me? You have nothing left. Your colonies burn. Your fleet is broken. What possible consequence remains that could frighten the Dominion?" "I was hoping you would ask that." Daniel nodded to Lieutenant Maria Santos. She pressed a sequence of buttons on her console. Across the galaxy, on 12 Velthari colony worlds, devices activated. These were weapons humanity had planted months earlier, carried by stealth teams who had infiltrated Velthari space, while the Dominion was focused on its invasion preparations. The Velthari security forces never detected them. How could they? They were looking for enemy fleets, not small packages buried beneath their own cities. The quantum destabilization bombs did not explode. There was no fire, no shockwave, no mushroom cloud. The planets simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there, home to billions of Velthari citizens. The next moment they were gone, converted to pure energy in flashes of light that burned brighter than stars. 12 worlds, billions of lives, ended in an instant. Varath stared at his tactical display as the lights representing his colony worlds winked out one by one. His face went pale beneath his scales. His hands trembled on his command throne. "Impossible," he whispered. "This cannot be." A second message arrived from Earth. This time it came from Secretary General Lisa Morgan herself. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something ancient and terrible. "High Counselor Varath, we have planted additional devices on your homeworld. One is buried beneath your capital city. Others are positioned at strategic locations across the planet. Withdraw your fleet from our space immediately. Return all human prisoners. Sign a treaty of permanent non-aggression. Fail to comply with any of these demands, and your homeworld will join your colonies." The silence stretched across the void of space. On both sides, millions of warriors waited to see what would happen next. Varath found his voice. "You are bluffing. You could not have reached our homeworld. Our security is absolute, is it? You thought your third fleet was invincible. You thought New Hope would fall easily. You have been wrong about us from the very beginning. Counselor, do you really want to gamble the lives of everyone on your homeworld that you are finally right?" The Velthari communications channels erupted in chaos. Admirals demanded orders. Officers reported panic among the crews. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If the humans could destroy 12 worlds without warning, what else could they do? What other surprises were waiting? Varath looked at the human fleet. 400 ships against his 6,000. He could still win this battle. He could still burn Earth to cinders. But what would be left of the Dominion? When it was over, even if he killed every human alive today, the weapons they had planted might still activate. His homeworld might still die. For the first time in 3 centuries of life, High Counselor Varath experienced true fear. "All ships," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Reverse course. Return to Dominion space." The Velthari fleet turned away from Earth. Thousands of warships that had come to exterminate humanity instead began the long journey home. Behind them, the human defenders watched in silence and disbelief. 3 months later, the Treaty of Earth was signed in Geneva. High Counselor Varath came in person, humbled and diminished. The terms were exactly what humanity had demanded. All prisoners returned. A permanent demilitarized zone established. The Velthari Dominion would never again threaten human space. Ambassador Chris Davis addressed the Galactic Assembly one final time. "We never wanted this war. We never sought conquest or glory or power over others. All we wanted was to live among the stars in peace. The Velthari gave us no choice. They attacked our ships. They murdered our diplomats. They enslaved our people. They forced us to become something we never wanted to be." He looked around at the assembled species. Many of them had spent centuries living in fear of Velthari expansion. Today, that fear was lifted. Let this be known across the galaxy. Humanity extends its hand in friendship to all who approach us in peace. We will trade with you. We will share knowledge with you. We will stand beside you against common threats. But if you threaten our people, if you attack our worlds, if you force us to choose between our values and our survival, then you will learn what we learned at terrible cost." He paused, and his next words echoed through the chamber. "We do not start wars, but we finish them. We gave the Velthari one final warning. They chose to ignore it. They dared to cross the line we drew, and they endured the consequence." Years later, Admiral Amy Turner visited the memorial on Earth, dedicated to all who had died in the war. She found Samantha Cole there, the teacher who had held a corridor against 18 Velthari soldiers. Samantha walked with a limp now, a permanent reminder of her wounds, but she walked with pride. "Do you ever wonder if it was worth it?" Samantha asked quietly. "All the death, all the destruction, the planets we erased from existence." Amy was silent for a long moment. "I wonder every day, but then I remember what would have happened if we had done nothing. The Velthari would have destroyed us, enslaved our children, erased our species from history. We did what we had to do. Action." She looked up at the sky, where ships moved among the stars in peace. "We are not conquerors. We are not monsters. We are simply a species that refuses to die quietly. And now the galaxy knows it. Samantha nodded. And what happens next? What do we do with a galaxy that finally respects us? Amy smiled. We do what we always wanted to do. We explore. We build. We make friends with those who want friendship, and leave alone those who want solitude. We become the civilization we always dreamed of being. She touched the memorial wall gently. We honor those who died by living well. That is the only way their sacrifice means anything. Above them, the stars burned bright with infinite possibility. Humanity had sent one final warning. The galaxy had heard, and the consequence had been endured.